First of all, thank you for all being here. And we are going to be talking about an issue that's plaguing not just our community, but our nation, and some of the ideas that we're coming up with to deal with it. I want to turn it over to Commissioner Kuney to talk about her thoughts on this topic right now.
Thank you, Sheriff. So I want to start by thanking all of our regional law enforcement teams for their hard work protecting our community. What I see happening today is a collaborative effort between all of our law enforcement teams working together as one to root out our gangs and violent crimes across our region. This will make our neighborhoods safer for our residents and our children. The dramatic rise in violent crimes that we have seen in Spokane County is not acceptable and has to be addressed. When innocent civilians and our law enforcement officers become bystanders and the targets of wanton attacks of violence, all other priorities as an elected official have to be put aside until a plan to address this troubling trend is implemented. So I thank the Sheriff today for doing that. Along with my fellow commissioners, our highest priority is to ensure law enforcement has the additional resources they need, and we will do this by funding this request. I support Sheriff Knezovich in his efforts to collaborate with local law enforcement agencies to address the rise in violent crimes in our community. I want to thank the Sheriff for his leadership as well as the law enforcement partners who will be working with the Sheriff's Department on this important initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and I'm honored to be here with the regional law enforcement community to amplify the message that we are bringing toward or for you today, and that is that the violence absolutely has to stop. Actively targeting law enforcement brings lawlessness to a whole new level. And I said this on Sunday when one of our officers was shot, and it bears repeating. We were inches away from losing an officer. This is unacceptable in our city, in our state, and in our country. Those officers were responding to a series of drive-by shootings that had happened in multiple locations. And unfortunately, this type of gun violence has become much too common. The violence has to stop. Since this past weekend, our officers in the city of Spokane have responded to a total of 81 shootings from January to last weekend. Half of those are drive-by shootings. At the current pace, we will surpass last year's total, which was the highest in 6 years. This is not who we are as a community, and I know this is not who we want to be. The Spokane Police Department has established a violent crimes task force. It includes 2 sergeants and 5 officers. They will focus on repeat offenders with connections to criminal enterprise and the violence that goes along with it. Criminals who perpetuate violence in our community know no boundaries. That's why we are here with our regional partners, to go after those who are wreaking havoc in our neighborhoods, on our streets, and in our communities. The work of that Violent Crimes Task Force will enhance the work of Safe Streets to target violent crime and the gangs by sharing intelligence, cooperation, collaboration, and coordination. So I just want to thank the regional partners for stepping up. As usual, thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. And to the Spokane community who has said enough of the violence. And I'm just going to tell you that our law enforcement is saying enough of the violence. Please know that they are working every single day and putting themselves at harm's risk to protect all of us. Thank you.
Hayley?
Hello, thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Pam Hayley. I'm the mayor of Spokane Valley. On behalf of our entire community, I would like to express my gratitude for including us in this conversation. The violent gang-related actions that have been occurring with more frequency lately strike at the heart of most people's fears, not being safe in your everyday life. People want to feel secure when they're in their homes, driving to the store, or taking their kids to a soccer game. These simple things are becoming more dangerous for everyone throughout our region due to the intentional and reckless disregard by these gang members. This is a regional problem and will require regional problem solving and commitment in tracking down those who are engaging in these seemingly random acts of violence and prosecuting them aggressively. I want to emphasize that the safety of our community is of paramount importance to our city and our citizens. as evidenced by the fact that public safety represents over 60% of our city's budget. I would like to say a thanks to Sheriff Knezovich for including Spokane Valley in this discussion today, and the collaboration of regional and federal agencies in focusing on the important and timely task of responding to these lawless individuals. I will be taking this information to our City Council with a request for further funding for this program. Thank you.
Commissioner French.
Our law enforcement officers put their lives on the line every time they put the uniform on. But they put the uniform on to keep you and your family safe. And we stand collectively side by side with them, making sure that they have the necessary resources to be able to keep themselves safe and to keep you safe. This is a difficult time where we've got people outside of the community trying to inflict harm on our citizens, and we've got a culture that's starting to emerge inside the community. This is a community effort. It's not just law enforcement. If you see something, say something. Call crime check. Any lead can be a pathway to arresting somebody that would do harm to you, your family, or our law enforcement officers. So thank you for being here, and I stand solidly with our elected leaders in support of our law enforcement officers, Ozzie, Sheriff Meidel, or Chief Meidel, and all of the others. So thank you for what you do.
As you've heard, the national trend is present here in Spokane too. Crime in general and violence in particular has been on an uptick. Our legislature hasn't been as helpful as they could be. And it's time, if not past time, for us to regroup, reorganize, get some additional funding from the Board of County Commissioners, and go after this problem that's plaguing our public safety. The role in the task force for my office will be very similar to the role that we play right now. And that will be to ensure, upon request, that the law enforcement officers investigating these crime scenes are given the correct and proper legal advice to make sure that the evidence that they so meticulously work to gather will be admissible in a court of law, and that the perpetrators of these violent crimes will be held accountable at a later time in a court of law. Thank you very much, Sheriff, and thank you all, Mayor, and the board for taking this so seriously. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. As Mayor Woodward discussed earlier, the number of shootings in our community is disturbing and unprecedented. Last year was a record year for the number of shootings in Spokane, and without a concerted effort, this year could be worse than last. In May, Chief Meidel, Mayor Woodward launched the Violent Crimes Task Force at the Spokane Police Department. This proactive unit, along with our Safe Streets Task Force, our patrol officers, and our Major Crimes Unit, are working tirelessly to hold shooters accountable and to get guns out of the hands of felons and off of the streets. The Spokane Police Department is fully committed to partnering with all of our regional partners and our federal partners to address this critical issue. We appreciate the support we've received across the county. Our department in particular is very grateful for all the support since Sunday's incident with Officer Honecker. We'd like to thank everyone in the community for reaching out and all the kind messages. We thank God for looking out for all of our officers and keeping them safe each and every day. Thank you.
I don't know if you remember, about 15 months ago, Chief Meidel and I stood in this room shoulder to shoulder, and we said we had a growing violence issue in our community. At that time, we had 4 dead kids in our community. If you've been driving around, if you've been paying attention, if you've been watching news coverage, you know that we put a billboard up trying to find justice for a young man that was killed in our community. But what we're receiving back is silence. Silence because you have fear in our community, fear of retaliation. Fear that if anybody does what Commissioner French suggests, if you see it, say it, you'll be a target. That is not the type of community we want to live in. You should not be afraid to do the right thing. The people that should be afraid right now are those committing these crimes. Well, today, if you're a gang member, if you're a drug dealer, if you're going to commit violent crimes in Spokane County, you are going to be arrested, you're going to be put in jail, and quite frankly, I hope the rest of the community, the criminal justice system does their job at that point, because we can arrest these people all day long. We have been doing our job. But judges and other elected officials that are creating policies that make it impossible for us to keep criminals in custody, you are failing your communities. I cannot say that any more strong. You have failed our communities. This is on you. You pass laws that make it impossible for us to talk to young, violent thugs that are killing each other. You pass laws that let people out of jail without doing their time. Those laws represent a real problem because unless you spend 365 days in prison, you cannot be taken into the federal system because you don't qualify as a violent offender. Your laws are failing your children, our children. The root of the problem is simple for gun violence. Drugs, gangs. You eliminate those two issues and you've wiped out a good chunk of gun violence in America. It's that simple. It's time to get serious at all levels. If you want our children to be safe, if you want to be able to drive down Sprague and not be involved in a crossfire of a gun battle, which we had happen a few months ago, then help us change the laws. I have talked to Representative McMorris because there are rules and laws and policies that prevent our federal partners from truly engaging at times at the street level. Because that's where we're in the biggest trouble right now, folks, is the street level. I've asked her to get with Senator Cantwell and try to find a bipartisan resolution to allow our federal partners to come down to the street level to help us take this violence off our streets. She's working diligently on that effort right now. My goal is to stop our children from dying, to stop the violence in this community, and to make sure that if you live in a house in some of our less affluent areas in this community, you don't have to worry about bullets flying through your doors. So if you're a gang member, drug dealer, we're coming for you. Be put on notice. It's time to maybe leave Spokane County. You're not going to like it here. Any questions?
I'll start. Sheriff Knezovich, how many gangs do you think are currently operating in the county? How many are on the radar, I guess?
You know, Emma, that number fluctuated since 1980s. And quite frankly, one of the reasons we have a gang issue in the community is because back then, people said there was no gang issue. Ask any law enforcement officer standing in front of you right now, and they'll tell you, denial. The same thing in our schools, denial. It fluctuates anywhere from 850 to 1,500 gang members in this community at any given time. The exact number of sets and anything else, I'm not in the gang unit anymore. I'm not that close to the ground. But if the inference is there's not a gang problem in Spokane County, it's part of the problem. It's this denial. It's been part of the problem for the last 2 years, the denial that crime is on the rise in Spokane County. And that message has been driven in our community. But your law enforcement leaders are going, crime's up. Help us out. So maybe it's time to take a harsh look at what we're really facing. And what we're really facing is, yeah, gangs are here. And I can tell you traditionally, that's about 950 to 1,500. That's not to necessarily include the wannabes. So there you are.
Amanda Rowley with Crime 2. I have a question for the mayor and maybe the assistant chief to talk about the Violent Crimes Task Force that was announced earlier this year. What are the metric or tangible goals for the task force? I know we've talked about the goal of arresting repeat offenders, but what other goals are there? It can't just be that. So are there other metrics that we're using to track the progress of the task force?
Well, I'll just start now. I should hand it over to you, Chief. It's been in effect for just a few weeks. So they went through 3 weeks of training before starting off. And in addition to going after the chronic offenders and aggregating those crimes to felonies, it's going after the suspects of violent crime so that we can build better cases against those individuals targetedly, and then so that we can get them longer sentences in prison. And we just haven't had the ability to focus that effort in that way in the past. It mirrors other specialty teams the department has assembled in the past that have proven to be very, very successful. And we don't anticipate this Violent Crimes Task Force to disband anytime soon.
Yeah, so the unit is a proactive unit. It's a street-level unit, so it fills a need in our department to have specially trained officers who, on short notice, are not responsible for radio calls. They don't carry an investigative caseload. They are in the community to go and find people associated with these types of incidents and to be able to get them off the streets as quickly as possible. They supplement our investigative side of the house, and they're an asset to patrol. To be able to go out and to get these folks before they're able to continue the violence.
If I could follow up with that, Steve.
Sure.
Last time we spoke about this task force, you mentioned it was proactive and reactive. So are there metrics to follow the reactive, or how is that happening now with the several shootings we've been seeing?
So when we have a shooting, they will go and try to assist the investigators in contacting those that are responsible. And that's the reactive component of that. But when you look at an investigator who carries a caseload, they have a lot of duties to build the charges, to write search warrants, and to conduct the investigative portion of this. This unit, they can say, I need to talk with this person, I need to talk with that person, and this person needs to be arrested. They go and they take that off the plate of our investigators so they can focus on their job.
Is it fair to say then a metric of tracking is maybe the arrests made? I mean, some kind of, is there a tick on the box that we're checking? There's got to be some form of what are we accomplishing? Is that a fair assessment of just these are the number of people we're arresting, or something else to show the success of the task force?
Yeah, so they're one piece of the puzzle. So yes, arrests are certainly something that we will look at as a win for them, but they're also their ability to get information, to contact witnesses in a timely manner, and to speed up that investigative process is another thing that we anticipate. It's just going to be a more effective, more robust response to the problems we're seeing.
I'd like to follow up on that. What we're looking at is taking all our assets, pulling them together, developing a clear mission and clear command and control. And we're going to go after the problem. The purest answer to your question, Amanda, is the absence of violent crime in our community. That is the metric. The day that we hit that, we'll be 100% successful. Odds of hitting 100%, well, let's be real. But a reduction in the number of shootings in our community, that's going to be our first metric. Are we stopping bullets flying through somebody's front door? That's the metric I want to focus on first. Stop the guns from going off. How many people are we putting in jail is going to be another. But here's one that you might want to track. Track how long they stay in jail. Because that's the true issue. Again, these people are dedicated and they do a darn good job taking the criminals off your street. Always have. My question to you is, how long are they staying in jail?
It might be a question for Prosecutor Haskell.
No, it's not.
You touched on that with the laws not doing enough to keep, or even judges keeping people incarcerated long
Larry,
enough to.
Well, I didn't talk specifically about the judges. What I talked about was the legislature. The legislature's been taking tools year by year away from the police and away from prosecutors in terms of sentencing options. There's a movement in the state to get rid of life without parole. There's a movement in the state to have the longest possible sentence be 20 years. There's a movement in the state to have the longest possible sentence 15 years. They've removed secondary robbery from the list of strike offenses. So that's just trends that we see as far as that goes. I sit very often and argue against early release on the clemency board, arguing that Spokane cases that I have reviewed prior to the board action should not be commuted by the governor. As far as the judges goes, I tell people all the time, pay attention. American courts are open. If you want to know what a judge is doing, go to the clerk's office, find out what that judge is doing that day, what kind of docket, what courtroom, and go in the back and sit. Unless there's a specific record made by a court, the courts are open. And we actually publish a document that goes into the court file when we have first appearances, and the bond that's given is reduced over what the state asked for. Not because we're tattling or anything like that, but several months later, a news reporter like yourself is going to call me up and say, hey, what happened on that case? Now I have a way to look that up. So, but that is part of the issue. The court rule hasn't changed, but the attitude towards it has.
And Amanda, I testified against legislation this year that removed or lessened the liability for enhancements on gun crimes. They went ahead and passed it. So we talk about we have to do something about gun crimes, gun violence. Well, what are you doing with it when you're taking away the tools to and taking away the very things that if I commit a gun crime, I'm going to go away for a long time? That doesn't happen anymore. You can commit a crime with a gun and not have those enhancements now. So how can you tell me that you're serious about reducing gun violence when you're allowing violent criminals to continue down that path with no enhancements? We arrest people, violent felonies. You read the press releases all the time. Felon with a gun. And they're released right back out. Unlike Larry, I will talk about the courts. Courts need to start taking a hard look at what they're putting back on our streets. Emma, I believe you had your hand up.
Mayor Hayley and Commissioners, you mentioned funding. You're going to ask for more funding and we're going to do more funding. So how much is that initial proposal going to be, and what is that specifically going to fund?
Let me answer real quickly, unless Mary, you want to.
Go ahead.
All three of these commissioners have given me $100,000 for this effort right now. They are serious about this issue. It wasn't even a discussion. It was, I understand the need. So the commissioners have stepped up to the plate. Mayors, I'll let you answer that part.
Sorry, while you're up there, what is that going to fund? Like, is there a specific program or you can?
You know, whenever you start combined, there's some incidentals, but I've envisioned most of this being overtime.
Okay.
So in order to fight our kids killing our kids, I'm going to go to the city council and ask for another $100,000 that can be used for overtime as well, and for this unit. Hopefully it'll help.
I have yet to be part of the funding discussion, so now that I'm hearing that, I don't get to make that decision legislatively, but certainly would be happy to carry that message to our city council.
Any other questions? Because I know we're pushing up against some timelines for some of our elected.
I guess, can you speak to the recent shootings? Are we seeing any relation to fentanyl? Is there any involvement of fentanyl in any of these shootings, aside from the usual street drugs? I don't know. I mean, that's been a campaign that we've had in the community to bring awareness, so I don't know if that's been involved in any of these incidents.
You want to talk about that?
I don't have an answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Here's what I hear from the people out there on the street doing the job. If you're arresting somebody that's involved in these type of issues, they have drugs on them. Right now, the drug of choice is fentanyl. And again, what are we doing to crack that problem? When you pass blanket decisions from the Supreme Court, when our legislature fails to fix that very bad decision from our Supreme Court, how do you get drugs off the street when you can't get drugs off the street? There's no consequences for having drugs on the street. Again, failed policies. And one that you might want to research, the state Supreme Court just made a ruling that basically in the state of Washington kind of eliminated equal protection under the law.
Do you know what case that is? Good case.
I don't have that one off the top of my head, but they just did. Do you have that one?
It's called State v. Sum, S-U-M.
And that's probably one of the most amazing decisions ever. And the conduct of our Supreme Court, and it's our Supreme Court justices and our Chief Justice, and going around to the media and heralding what they've done and saying that they're going to look at cases and they're looking to cases to overturn convictions. I believe that that's a violation of their code of ethics. And I believe that this decision is a violation of the Constitution of the United States. And I hope there's an attorney out there willing to take that one up. Any other questions?
Mayor Woodward said that there have been more than 80 shootings this year already. How do you classify them as gang shootings as opposed to other types of shootings?
Right now, I believe the mayor was talking globally as far as shootings. We'd have to go and break the data down, and I believe that if you do that, you will find that the majority of those are going to be gang-related and or drug-related. What are the two root causes of gun violence? Gangs and drugs, or gangs and or drugs. Those are the issues. So we can do the research, and happy to get you the breakdown of what those are. Anything else? If not, I'm going to, those who want to stick around and answer some questions, will stick around and answer some questions. Thank you.